The Cold War heats up. That is our title for today. But first, the joke. Why did the cookie go to the hospital? Give up? Because he felt crummy. Yikes. Noah and Hayden, that's who's responsible for that joke today. Let's move on to the key concepts. When North Korea surprise attacked South Korea, was it a good idea and where did it take place? Did the communists led by Mao Zedong gain strength, and if so, how? What beliefs did the communists have? And then last but not least, why did Chinese soldiers join Korea in the war? Key vocab for the day, Korean War and Mao Zedong, two names that we just heard about in the key concepts. We're going to learn more about them as the notes continue. 5 years after World War II came to an end, the United States will get involved in another war, the Korean War. But first we need background on China. For 2 decades, Chinese communists struggled against the nationalist government of Chiang Kai-shek, the leader in China. Many Americans were impressed by him, but the U.S. officials who dealt with him had a different point of view. They didn't like his government, they didn't like some of his policies, and that undermined nationalist support. And it also gave opportunity for the communists, led by Mao Zedong, to gain strength. Eventually, this communism that is established in China will make its way into Korea. When the Japanese left China at the end of World War II, cooperation between the nationalists and the communists ceased. Japan, an enemy, leaves, and they have reason to focus on against one another again. Civil war erupted between the two groups. The United States played peacemaker, but failed to get a peace. America was stunned after the Mao Zedong and the communists took over China. The State Department said that it was a result of internal forces, but the U.S. had failed to involve them. Now let's shift focus into Korea. In 1910, Japan took over Korea. But later on, as World War II ended, Japanese troops north of the 38th parallel surrendered to the Soviets. After World War II, the U.S. had cut back its armed forces in the southern part of Korea. And as a result, at the end of the war, there were about 500 American troops there. Now, on June 25th, 1950, North Korea swept across, or Korean forces above the 38th parallel, swept across to the south for a surprise attack on the southern part of Korea. The Soviets were boycotting the council in protest over the presence of China. And then in June June 27th of the same year, Truman ordered more troops into Korea. And overall, 16 nations sent about 52,000 troops to help the southern part of Korea. 90% of those were American soldiers. On September 15th, 1950, General MacArthur, you should remember his name from World War II, MacArthur led his troops on a surprise attack, landing inside enemy lines in a city named, I don't know if I know this, Incheon, on Korea's west coast, with some attacks also in Pusan. While they were fighting, by the end, MacArthur made about half of North Korea's troops surrender, while the other half fled back across the 38th parallel. With a strong push from the United States in Korea, eventually the Chinese start fighting back. They did not like having the Americans so close, and they wanted Korea next to them for protection. By January 1951, all South Koreans and UN troops had been pushed out of North Korea, or what was the northern part of Korea. MacArthur then called an extension of war on China with the use of nuclear weapons, meaning he wanted to use nuclear weapons on China. Harry Truman rejected MacArthur's wishes. And then because MacArthur wouldn't stop criticizing the president, because the president would not allow nuclear war follow through, the president on April 11th, 1951 ends up firing MacArthur. MacArthur, a World War II hero, Harry Truman ends up firing for his leadership or his criticism, whatever you want to call it, in North Korea, in the Korean War. Finally, in July 1953, the two sides signed an armistice ending the war. Basically, not much as far as gaining land, losing land had happened since 1951. Uh, but casualties were really high. The war cost about 54,000 American lives and about 67 billion in expenditures or cost. Okay, so the war was very deadly and costly. It lasted for about 3 years before it came to an end. And then the result, you have North Korea and South Korea, and those two countries still exist today. Cut right at the 38th parallel, which you saw in the map earlier in one of the slides. That's it. Noah, Hayden, thank you very much. We'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.